This lecture is about design criteria. Before you create a formal design, it's good to determine what are the criteria by which that design should be evaluated. So design criteria answers the questions, what would a successful design accomplish, and how would I distinguish a good design from an insufficient design? So you want to think of it basically as an evaluation tool for your innovation. So we talked about impact in the last lecture, right? So we are looking to either eradicate or reduce the problem. We want to improve outcomes for beneficiaries. We might want to improve the outputs of our intervention as long as they really are truly proxy measures for how well the beneficiary is improving. So your first step is that you want to draft the design criteria. And there are a number of tools you can use. There's no right or wrong way to do it. This one model I wanted to show you, it's from the Ogilvy and Leitka book, Designing for Growth, a design thinking toolkit for managers. It's available for free via the USC library. So feel free to pull this one and play with it if you like the format. We're going to do a little work in the design criteria canvas, a very simple way of breaking down criteria that breaks it down across must, should, could, and won't. And I'll show you a way to up the innovation ante in a moment. So Leitka and Ogilvy do a nice job of framing design criteria. They basically say that it answers the question, if anything were possible, our design would fill in the blank. So what they're really looking for is a succinct expression of the ideal end state, the ideal qualities or attributes of a great solution, but not the solution itself. So really hang on to the fact that this is a yardstick and not a blueprint for your design. So because we're design thinkers and because we're social workers, for us, the design criteria really must connect to the intended impact. And so we might really try to frame it as the desired outcomes that we're seeking. So if we think about that in Leitka's framework, ultimately we can kind of shift our question to say, if anything were possible for our design, it would result in the following impacts. Or if we go further to like USC's message or USC's method of social innovation, what we might actually reframe it as is, if you're thinking about the norm deviant model, if anything were possible, our design would result in the following behaviors. So this is really important. It's a way of connecting our innovation argument all the way back to the work that we did in 7-Eleven on norms and connect it forward. So in this thinking about the criteria, we're actually saying, does the criteria of our design meet the norms and deviant that I established early on? You can also take this one step further and say, not only if anything were possible, our design would result in the following behaviors, but you can go one step further in describing how the outcomes or outputs of that behavior would be measured and even the potential desired magnitude of that change. So the next thing you do after you've come up with the first set of the design criteria is not to rest there. You want to actually go back and refine it and see if you can maximize it for openness or innovation. So first question is, what attributes have you identified? And you might even start them out as design features. So number one, question your assumptions. And I have a little picture of Harry Potter in here because for me, the picture somehow that comes to mind is of those sweet kids running towards platform 9 3/4 trying to get through the wall, right? It looks as if they're going to hit the wall, it looks as if they're going to hit the wall, but boom, they make it through. And so I think we need to challenge our own assumptions in that way. Are the constraints that we've identified really constraints? Do we have to be HIPAA compliant? Do we have to deploy within school systems? And sometimes you may say, yes, these are the constraints that I want to work within. Other times you might say, wait, we might even be able to work around them. So that's the really important part that questioning your assumptions brings to the table. You want to also ask if you can adjust the attribute to have a greater focus on outcomes. So sometimes our first cut at criteria or design features might be very focused on what's the output, or it might be very focused on what we want the innovation to look like. But instead, we want to step back and say, are we getting as close to the outcome for our beneficiaries as we possibly can in terms of the output of our project? Last element you want to look about is just making sure that you focus on the elements that you really care about, the things that you think are the most important. And ultimately, these should be, do the outputs that I framed really connect back to the desired behavior change? Is this really going to result from the behavior I'm trying to incentivize? So let me just run you through what opening up a problem for innovation looks like. So this is one of my favorite examples. It's a tooth decay problem. So if we think about the traditional interventions for the problem of dental hygiene, usually we think of a toothbrush, right? And that's usually framed according to its features. So it has bristles and a handle. It needs to be made of plastic. It must be used for 2 minutes, and it needs to cost $3.50. But when we think about framing it as an outcome, we start to focus on a different element. We begin to think about what it must accomplish, and that is really removing plaque from teeth. So maybe we set a specific metric that it must remove 80% of the plaque on your teeth. We might also open it up for innovation by saying it needs to take less than 5 minutes to use. Maybe we're willing to allow for more than 2 minutes, but 5 is the upper end of that spectrum. The other way to describe it, again, is sort of in the framework of outcomes. We want it to be rugged and durable. We want it to have ability to last, not necessarily do we care about what it's made from. And we may care about cost. So we might say, well, maximum upper threshold is about $5. Right, so that's a way to think about opening it up for innovation, and we'll work through a case in the next video so you'll get another example of what this looks like.